Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Jean Marie.
Collectively, we're the hosts of PodcastDX. Our guest today is Sherry Graber, or is it Graber? I guess I should have asked. Is it Graber?
It's Graber.
Okay. Sherry is speaking with us today about a rare disease that her son is dealing with. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, everybody.
Again, thank you for joining us today. Can you start us out first by telling our listeners what exactly is your son's condition and is there a name for it?
So my son Dylan has basically hypertrophied muscles, which are very enlarged muscles that he's had really since he's born. There is no name for this. There is nobody else in the world identified with this at this time. He is the only one in the world. And it looks like it's a genetic mutation from the DNA level to the RNA level. And they believe they found the mutation in one of the genes that's responsible for muscles. And that's as far as DNA that I'm aware of. They're still in the process of trying to find more information, but it's a very, very, very slow process.
I'm
and
sure.
just after hearing you say that, I'm going back and requesting that somebody offer honorary degrees to parent caregivers. I think you should all be granted honorary medical degrees for the knowledge that you've had to obtain to help your child.
Right.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
And when your son was, how old was he when he was first diagnosed with this condition? Was it at birth?
Looking back when I first had him, I didn't put some signs together that I first saw. So, as a new mom and a newborn, I was in the room with him, and he lifted from the bassinet his head up, looked to the side, and looked to the other side, and put his head down, controlled.
Wow.
And I rubbed it was fascinating. I rubbed my eyes and thought, nobody's going to believe that this just happened.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it just happened, but I did see it. Then when I took him to a well baby visit, maybe 5 months old, he was just eating me out of the house at that age, which I knew teenage boys did, but I didn't think a baby would. And I asked the doctor, how much should he be eating for his size, for his age? And he said, if he is full, he'll turn his head, that he won't be interested, or he has like an internal shutoff valve that he'll just stop eating. And I said, no, he's still eating like 4 times more than a normal baby should be eating. And he said, no, it's impossible. He'll throw up if he has too much. And I said, no, he just keeps eating. So he didn't think too much of it. And then about 2 years old, when we were doing more play dates and he was running around, most of the other kids that would come over, that we would go to their house, they were very tiny, wiry little kids, or had that like baby chub kind of look. And he just had muscles popping out of him, and he was able to run, and his balance and coordination were so much stronger and well defined and developed than other kids. But I didn't really know where else. I didn't know if there was a problem or it was just really neat to see.
And the
so when
doctors
he was
the doctors at that point didn't say anything?
No, didn't
Okay.
say anything. So there was no reason for me to think there was anything actually wrong. But when he was 5, we were with a new pediatrician, and I asked him about it. And he said, he is very muscular. You have good insurance. Why don't you take him to UCLA and see what they say? And that's kind of where our journey started, was when he was 5 at UCLA genetics department.
Okay. And what did they find at UCLA?
So we were with Dr. Crandall, one of the world's renowned geneticists, and she plotted his muscles. So she took measurements of his arms, his legs, and plotted them against other 5-year-olds the same age and boys. And he was off the charts. And she believed that he had an undiagnosed muscle muscle myostatin disorder. And she wanted to send his blood to Germany. That was the only lab at that time that was able to look at the MSTN gene specifically. And we waited, and it turned out that there was no mutation that they could see. But this being a potential brand new one, there was no way to actually test for a brand new mutation specifically to what she was looking for.
I see.
So she believed there was a mutation, just not discovered yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
And Sherry, were there other symptoms like associated with this condition?
The only things really is that he has no body fat. He's extremely muscular, that other parents would say, wow, did you see his legs? And I'm like, yeah, I live with him. I see him. And an increased appetite.
Sure.
I mean,
we
can eat
just
us under the table.
What you just said reminded me. Yesterday, we just did a podcast on how to properly talk with someone that may have something that's a little bit different or out of the norm than others. And how to be polite, so you might want to listen to that episode so that you have an idea of how to deal with people when they're a little bit rude.
Yeah, definitely.
Because how could somebody come up and say, did you see? Yeah, that sounds strange. Sherry, has Dylan undergone any other testing for the condition?
So he did the blood work, and then he did do a punch biopsy.
Was that like
2.5 years ago?
That was where they actually put a hole through the muscle?
Yes. So they wanted to look closer at his muscle. So they did it on his right thigh, and unfortunately, it was pretty uncomfortable for him.
I've heard
but
that
once we got home, he was able to walk around, and the following day, he was right back to himself.
Okay, good.
So they took, I don't remember how many actual samples they took, but once they found the information that at the DNA level, they saw this mutation, they looked at the RNA level, which is more specific than DNA, and saw that the mutation was there as well. So it turns out we did trio exome sequencing, which is myself, my husband, his father, and Dylan. So the three of us. My husband has no mutation whatsoever. I actually have the same mutation as well. They believe that it is sex-linked, so only affecting boys at this time. They're not 100% certain, but because I don't present the same way, I wish I did, but I don't.
Right.
That they believe that it is sex-linked. So they did look at my dad, and he does not have the mutation. They did not look at my mom. So I either have a spontaneous mutation that I passed down, or I did somehow get it from my mom, and we just are not aware of it. They may in the future look at my mom, but at this time they know at least it's a spontaneous one for me, or it was passed down from my mom, and then to Dylan, and he's presenting with quote unquote symptoms of just the hypertrophied muscles and the huge appetite and no body fat.
Right. I know that this probably wasn't something that we were going to discuss, but since the heart is a muscle, have they mentioned that they're concerned at all about that?
We actually I started taking him, excuse me, to the UCLA Cardiac Center for Pediatrics, and they have been monitoring him per my suggestion. I actually am a nurse.
Okay.
So I am pretty well versed in medical stuff, and so it was my idea, and I desperately wanted to make sure that his heart was okay. There's different kinds of muscles. So there's cardiac muscle, which does involve the heart. There's smooth muscle, which are the organs like inside the belly, and then there's skeletal muscle.
Right.
And this looks to be affecting just the skeletal muscle.
Okay.
So at this time, there has been, thankfully, no cardiac involvement.
Good.
But we do keep an eye on him.
Sherry, how's your son handling all of this?
He's been a trooper. He's really is and has been a trooper. He very much understands that there's something different about him. Most people can't tell with clothes on, which is good. But if he is wearing a shirt, especially now being 14, that he's even more muscular and going through puberty, starting to develop as a normal young boy would be. If he's wearing shorts, his calves pop out every single step he takes. If his shorts happen to go up, you can see his quads, and they're enormous.
Right.
He's extremely strong. I think that I didn't mention that. On top of being muscular, he happens to have the strength as well. But he does understand and recognize that he might hold a special key inside him that could help a lot of others once they figure out what's going on with him. That the physician that's following him now, also at UCLA, his son actually has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And so he's very involved and wants to get a diagnosis as well, because it might be able to help his son and others like him, which is also a sex-linked disease, the Duchenne's, mostly affecting the boys. And I've been following a lot of ALS, the Lou Gehrig's, which is an awful disease as well. And just with the muscle wasting, he might hold something in him that could help in the future to allow those that are diagnosed with those muscle wasting diseases to turn those around and have a lot longer life expectancy and live much better and healthier in the long run.
That's incredible.
Right. That'd be great.
And I don't suppose there are any adaptations that you've had to make to help your son in his day-to-day life, because he can probably
Besides,
he's probably helping you.
Are you a member of like a bulk food store type club? Like a
food store?
Are you
like Costco,
Costco,
Sam's Club, where you can actually
get enough food?
Yeah.
Oh yes, we go to Costco a couple times a month, and one of the first things that we saw that he was able to have so much strength was he picked up a water.
Like the water cooler bottles?
A case.
Case
of water. Just picked it up like nothing. And here I'm struggling just to pick it up, let alone put it into the cart.
Okay, and I was going to say, I was going to tell a joke, and it's very tasteless, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for it. But one day, he may realize that he's from Krypton.
Superman, yes.
I think he realizes that he is so strong and so muscular. Even when I have a picture of him when he was probably 7, and we were getting some gallons of water at the supermarket, and he picked up 2, and I looked at him because he was carrying it like it was just no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, can you pick up 4? So he picked up 4, and he still was like, yeah, do you need more? And I was like, okay, can you get 6? And he carried 6. He's like, how far do I have to walk? And I said, just to the checkout, which was maybe 100 yards. And he just carried it and put them all on the conveyor to check out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really live with my own Superman.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Sherry, are there any, because there's so much unknown, and he's, there's such a small population to work with, him being the only one, are there any treatments available for this, or are there any concerns regarding this condition?
There's no treatments at all. The only other interesting thing that we know is, so typically when you have too much myostatin, it tells the brain, I have too much muscle, don't make any more. And that's when you become very flaccid and very weak and not having that muscle, such as muscular dystrophy. And then when you have too little myostatin, it tells the brain, oh, I don't have enough muscle, let me produce more, which is where we thought he was falling into, that he just didn't have enough myostatin, and so the body was creating more.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that the doctor he was working with a pharmaceutical company working with myostatin, and they on their own asked if they could run Dylan's myostatin level. And what makes it so interesting is he happens to have double the amount of myostatin that he should have and has the muscle.
Okay.
So that's what makes him so incredibly unique, is he has double the amount of myostatin and has the muscular
Right.
skeleton.
So
That
it's not like
he
his body
shouldn't
is,
have.
his body isn't saying, "Oh no, don't make any more." He just keeps doing it.
Yeah,
He's like
making more.
he's in a loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So they're not really quite sure what's happening, what they want to do next, and that's where we kind of got stuck on funding. I think mostly, unfortunately, because COVID came shortly after I put a post for GoFundMe. They want to do a mouse model, and a mouse model would kind of basically turn what is inside Dylan, that DNA structure, into the mouse to see if the mouse presents like Dylan.
Okay.
And so they would get an incredible amount of research and answers at this level, and testing and understanding what's happening with him. Cost about $50,000. Hopefully the cost hasn't gone up since we first started this, but that's the next step that his physician wants to do. And we just haven't been able to get where we want to be with the funding for that next level.
Okay.
And there aren't any muscular dystrophy organizations that are willing to aid in funding this project?
I've been in contact with, not necessarily the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in contact with some other families because they've been doing a lot of fundraising. But I think because there's so much unknown, and the Foundation for Muscular Dystrophy is so much larger,
Mm-hmm.
they're having that money geared towards the research they already know.
Okay.
It would be amazing if we could kind of join forces and have them or somebody be able to help on the funding side, because if we are able to find out more information that could ultimately help them as well, it would be ideal.
Right. Well, we're definitely going to put a link for your GoFundMe page on our website, and at the end of the interview, I'll let you spell it all out. I did have a question. Since muscle has to be fed, basically, right, with protein, would it help ease his muscle growth if you cut down on the protein intake?
We haven't been advised to do anything specific like that. I mean, he does love meat, I can tell you that.
Uh-huh.
But he'll really eat anything. He's got a great appetite and a great variety of foods that he eats, but we haven't been advised specifically to have him follow anything.
Okay. So it's his body's need to make the muscle, so he knows that he needs to eat that protein, and he's got that urge, and you're just taking care of him like a mom.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. The only other thing, because I think one of the questions that I didn't touch upon was there anything negative that we could see at this time? And the only thing that we were concerned about, because he is an athlete, he plays soccer, and he's on a club team, is if his muscles do get too large, would there be an increased risk of injury to the tendons and ligaments that wouldn't be able to support the muscle size?
Mm-hmm.
So far, so good. He seems to be growing in proportion, which is good as he's gotten bigger. Like the muscles have gotten bigger, so he doesn't quite look like the Hulk that his arms are real wide, kind of look. So he's been growing. As he's been growing, the muscles are growing with him.
Do his muscles seem like the growth is like slowing down a little as he's getting older versus when he was newborn and they were growing more rapidly?
It doesn't seem to be growing or slowing down. It seems to just have been a steady growth as he's just gotten older. I mean, you can see through his regular T-shirt that he's got pecs, like pectoral muscles, just kind of popping out. If you were to look at his arm without him flexing, you can see the line like go out of his arm that he's got biceps and triceps, and if he flexes, it's like, holy moly. There's still boys his age that don't have this muscle, although it's much more normal per se to start becoming more muscular as they're going through high school and early college years. But to have this physique when he was in elementary school and middle school, that's more so what people would say and comment on of, wow, he's just so incredibly muscular. And the more we heard it, the more we're like, we know, we just wish we had the answers as to why and what does this mean for the future. Is there, because he actually metabolizes so quickly. We were wondering if he needed to be on medication, would the dose be appropriate, or would he need a higher dose? But because doses are based on, for at least pediatrics, height, or not height, but size for weight-wise, they don't know if it's safe to even give him a higher dose. So that's been a discussion as well.
Yeah, another added challenge.
Right.
I also have another very odd question. Have you ever, and it might not at all be relevant, there are certain breeds, because we were talking about animal modeling in mice, there are certain breeds of cattle that actually, it's hyperplasia rather than hypertrophy, but I wasn't sure, like, have you guys, does that come into play at all? Have you guys looked into that, like the Belgian blues? Is it a comparable? I know it's not comparable, but is there anything to be learned?
Is that, yeah, right.
Is there anything to be learned from that, from those?
Right. I've definitely asked the geneticist who's on his case now, before he even got tested with the myostatin level that the pharmaceutical company had done, just knowing, because for the animals, it sounds like they don't have the myostatin, which is why they present so muscular. And that's the avenue I was kind of going with the physician. And once we found out that his myostatin was double the amount, it was like, well, that sounds like it's kind of off the table, although they present similarly with the large muscular look and no fat and probably increased appetite. He looks like he would be part of that DNA that the animals have with the cattle. With, I think there's a dog as well. There's a few animals that present that way too.
But it's a whole different chemical.
We talked about it, but yeah, it sounds like he's not fitting in that category because his myostatin level's too high.
And then I know Jean was going to ask you if you could go to UCLA or one of the other special clinics, but does UCLA reach out to the other research clinics since he is the only one in the world? And I'm thinking back to a TV show that was very short-lived, but they actually put the word out on this TV show for very rare diseases so that the entire world could look at it.
To crowdsource information.
Crowdsource information.
Yes, that was a physician in New York who I actually reached out to. So to answer the first question, he is being seen at UCLA Genetics. That's where we've been going since he was 5. So they all know his case, and they have meetings, I think, once a month or so to kind of see where everybody's at with these rare cases. I don't know if they reach out to any other schools or big universities for teaching or anything like that, because it's, I think, very specific when they have something that they're working on to keep it kind of their own.
Yeah, that's true. You got a point there.
Yeah. So I don't think they've been able to do that avenue. I know that the mouse model was going, if we're able to get the funding, was going to be done at another school in California up north. I'm sure there's papers that have to be filled out with all kinds of special information that it won't be shared, et cetera, except for with UCLA Genetics Department. I forgot what the other question was.
I was just wondering if you were able to reach out and crowdsource in order to get more answers. Could you do it personally?
I'm not really sure how. I would be able to do it. I'm on quite a few Facebook, like rare disease groups.
Right.
I watched the series on Netflix with
Okay.
the unusual,
Yes.
that the show that you're referring to,
Yes.
and reached out to that physician. She was unfortunately not able to do too much, and she wasn't sure if there was going to be another series, although I wish it was, because
Right.
it was fascinating.
It really
to me,
was. I loved
living.
it. Yes, it was interesting. And when you
Yeah,
and
very.
when you're thinking to yourself that you have the only child in the world, it's as far as you know, and unless you can put the word out to the world, how would you know?
Well, I know, as his physician has explained to us, there's some kind of a bank that
A genetic bank,
the
like
information. I'm sorry.
a genetic bank, more or less.
Yeah, something like that, to that effect, where the information that they have so far is in this bank, and if there's anybody else out there that uses this, they would see anything similar to a patient that they may have in another country, another state, wherever it may be, and they would be able to share resources and information. So we do have that, but there hasn't been anything so far found from anybody else.
Okay, all right. And
Sure.
I think Ron was going to ask you about therapies. I kind of got off the track.
Well, interesting because we were talking about some stuff. You mentioned about the ligaments and tendons and ligaments earlier. Have the doctors recommended anything, or have they said just continue doing what you do, or are they concerned because his muscles are so strong that it might affect, again, the tendons and ligaments or anything else?
I mean, at this time, he hasn't had, thankfully, any injuries to ligaments or tendons. I think we just more or less discussed that it could be a possibility because the ligaments and tendons appear to be growing normally, and just knowing that his muscles are so large, they may not be able to support in some way in the future. So just more to be aware that it could happen, and if it does, to share with an orthopedist that could be treating him. But he hasn't had any kind of therapies. I mean, he might be able to even teach a class.
Sure. Right. And I'm thinking you might be able to get some information from the bodybuilding community
And how they don't.
on how they
to
don't
prevent injuries.
how they prevent injuries to the ligaments and tendons, because they obviously work very hard to bulk up as much as they can. I know they use wraps and supportive garments at the joints. He might need to be doing something like that in the future for his soccer.
Right. It's very possible. And we were nervous, my husband and I, when we first kind of dove into this and was getting started with the physicians, because we didn't want him to be accused of using any kind of steroids, that this was him, it's his genetic makeup. And because he's an avid soccer player, if he did happen to get a scholarship, which would be amazing, and he wants to go to UCLA, which is nice and local, but we didn't want that for his future, because that would put us in a difficult situation, and for him to have to explain,
right.
He doesn't have to do anything. He could literally just sit for months and years, and he'd still have all this muscle and no fat and eat whatever he wants.
Yeah, I do envy him the no fat and eat whatever he wants part of it, definitely.
Yeah. I do too, especially since I gave it to him, it appears.
And you had mentioned that there are some you were concerned about the
stigma, I guess.
Stigma, yes. So it's possible stigma. Have there been any other challenges during this journey?
Specific to muscles?
Well, no, it's specific to he stands out in a crowd.
Right.
So has it affected him? Has it affected you guys?
Mental health?
How do you guys deal with that and stay so centered?
We're pretty open with him, so he's very aware of him being different. But he's very shy of his physique. So, for example, if we're swimming, he'll wear a swim shirt. He didn't want to bring attention to himself. He knows he has a six pack. He knows he's got the pec muscles. He knows when he was 7 that he had them and nobody else in his friend group or family friend group had that, especially at that age. So he's very aware that he looks different. I think he's probably a little more excited as he's getting older that more peers will start to look like him, so he won't stand out quite the same. But he's definitely been shy and will change his shirt in a different way so that, like in the locker room for PE at school, like he would definitely change as fast as he possibly could so that nobody could see he had this muscle and they didn't. I mean,
Yeah, it's got to
my
be
husband
hard. It's got to be hard on a kid.
Yeah, just knowing that you look different in
Yes,
whatever
yes.
regard that may be.
Correct.
And, you know, to us, we're like, wow, you should show this off. You could be an underwear model. I mean, look at all the things you could do. And to him, he's like, nope, I'm hiding as much as I can. I don't want anyone to look at me.
I can understand that.
Yeah, kids just want to be kids.
Right, right.
Yeah, they do.
How have your family and friends supported you during all of this?
They've been our biggest cheerleaders. We're very blessed and lucky to have had the support. They all find it fascinating. My mom has done tons of research and sends me enough emails to fill up my email box
I could picture that.
with different doctors around the world and different articles she may see online, just in case we've missed anything. So it's been a great help, and we're very lucky that we've had so much help and support.
And what's the best advice that you've received, either friends or family or doctors or anybody in general? What's the best advice you received? And also another question, what tips or advice might you have for people being a parent with a child with a rare disease?
I think the best advice that I've been given is probably just to not give up, not stop fighting. I've been his advocate because he didn't have a voice, and knowing, just being a nurse too and mom to 2, that I am their voice, I am his voice. I need to keep fighting because there is something different, and even though we've made strides slowly, we still want an answer as to why. I think that's the biggest question always. And then what can we do with that information, and how can we help for the future of those that have devastating diseases, illnesses that might need that extra support and help. We're lucky in the fact that at this time we don't see any negative really as far as living day to day. But those with the other diseases do. It's life and death for them. And the best advice I can give is to try to maintain the grounded family unit and try not to have it disrupt your daily life as much as possible. I mean, it's always in the back of my mind to get the answers and find out the why, but to not take away, because we do have another child, to not take away from her that she's just as much an active unit in our family, and to be there for her just as much. I mean, she understands that this is something so unusual and so rare that we do have to take some time to read articles and read emails and go to doctor's appointments, but to be there and do special things with her, take her out for a special meal or go get her nails done with just her one-on-one time, and not forget that she's there too.
I think both of your kids are lucky. They've got a great mom.
Yes. I was thinking the exact same.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I would really like to share your social media information with our listeners. And if you could tell us how to reach out with that GoFundMe page.
Yes. So on Facebook, I created kind kind of I don't know what it's called, something that is a page just to keep updates on anything that we may be
Oh, a personal
finding.
page.
Yeah,
Yes.
a personal page. It's not my page. It's
Yes.
specifically for him and this, and it's called The Source of Dylan's Strength. And it's the Dylan's is DYLAN''S. So The Source of Dylan's Strength. And I post pictures and updates of any new information that we may be getting. And there is a link on there to our GoFundMe to earn money for that mouse model so we could get the research and learn more.
Okay, great. Thank you. And is there anything else that our listeners can do to help Dylan?
Just the support and love is enormous. To share the page, because you never know who that one person is that may have more information, or a physician that happens to see a patient in their practice that just doesn't know this could be a possible genetic mutation that their patient may have, or another family member that says, my kid sounds like that kid, maybe I should look into it further. So if anyone could just share the information to get it out there, because if Dylan is not the only one, it would be amazing to have more people to get more information on board.
Excellent,
Sure.
excellent.
Yeah,
we will definitely be broadcasting this to the world, and we are heard in 60 countries, and
Wow.
hopefully the word will get out and the money will come in for your mouse model.
Yeah.
I would like to see strong mice running around a lab in UCLA.
As long as they're not running around in our house.
Thank you so much. I mean, it would be the biggest blessing we could ever ask for.
We really appreciate you coming up today and telling your story, or actually Dylan's story, Sherry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, we truly appreciate what you guys are doing and sharing and getting the word out for so many people.
If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us. They can contact us at PodcastDX@yahoo.com, through our website, PodcastDX.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regime, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.
Till next week.